Well, let's work with Java and a database. So to do that, one of the best ways to do it, as of now, is to work with the Netbeans IDE. And with the Netbeans IDE, what you can do is you can download the version, which is Java EE, which is the Enterprise Edition. And with that, when I hover over that, let's see if it gives us some information. And it says tools for creating Java web and enterprise applications compatible with Java EE specs. Includes support for servlets, JSP, Java server pages, Java server faces, and other things that we may be interested in. So let's go ahead and download that. And when you go to install it, one of the questions may be, on this version, it wants to know if you want to do Glassfish and Apache Tomcat. Well, Glassfish is kind of the full deal. And what it is it allows us to write programs and then run them on our server so that we can test them. Um, so I'm just going to go with Glassfish on this and go ahead and finish the install. Now I had a previous version of NetBeans on here, so I need to make sure that I'm running the current Java EE version. And I'm going to create a new Java project. New. But instead of a Java application, I'm going to make a Java web application. I'll give this a different name. Database example. Make sure I know where this is being saved at. And I'm good to go. I'm going to click next. Now, what kind of server do I want to run on this? Now, when I create the code for this web application, I want to be able to test it. And so I need a web server to be running. I can either use a web server online from a third party, or I can use this personal web server, Glassfish, to run on my desktop, to run on my laptop, and create a web server where I can run these examples on. So I'm going to go ahead and leave Glassfish selected here, and we're using Java EE, so that'll work. I'm going to click next. Now there are other frameworks which I can include with this, but for now I'm going to do pretty basic, just creating a web page. And I'm going to use JSP to do that. So I'm going to leave these unselected for now and go ahead and generate this code. By default, it gave me an index.html page, and I've got my projects tab selected. And I have my database example project here, and it created a index.html, but I don't want that. If you've ever worked with HTML, you know that index.html is kind of the first page that if you have a website, index.html is the default web page. Well, I don't want to work with just .html files. I want to work with something called JSP files. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Sure you want to delete it? Yes. And what I want to do is I want to go to my web pages folder, right click, and add a new JSP file. There it is. Okay. And I want to call this one index. It's in the project database examples. It's in the web pages folder. I know where the location is on my computer where this is located at in JSP file. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this. So you notice it generated a JSP file, and the JSP file looks a lot like HTML, like an HTML file, and it does use HTML. Um, and in here you'll see that in H1 tags it says hello world in the body of the web page. Okay, so I want to run this HTML file, and to do that I need to run this using a web server. I mean, you have to have a web server before you can run a web page. Um, so built in with Java EE, one of the things that comes with Java EE is a web server, a little personal web server. So when I go ahead and run this, it should bring up a web page. Go ahead and run this, and it starts our web page, our web servers down here. And in a bit, and it creates a web page. This one is using, I have Internet Explorer set as the default. This is using Internet Explorer to bring up our web page. So you see in our code what we did is that we said in H1 tags say hello world, and that's the only thing it's outputting on this one. So there we have a .jsp file, and we have some default code in there, HTML code, which just says hello world. Okay, so everything's working okay. Go ahead and close that back down, and let's add some Java code to this. So I added paragraph tags below my hello world, and in my paragraph tags I want to add Java code. And to add Java code to this JSP file, what I need to do is I need to put in the less than sign and a percent sign. Okay, and let's see if I can. Nope, won't let me do that automatically. All right, and then the end of that is percent sign, and then greater than sign. Okay, so I can put my Java code between these two beginning and ending markers. Okay, so I'm going to put my Java code in here. Pick that up one more. All right. So my Java code is, I'm going to create a string. I'm going to call it message, and I'm going to assign to it whatever's between these double quotes, which I put in hello from Java EE JSP. Okay. Now to display that, I need to do something. I'm going to go right below this one, and I'm going to put in Java percent, darn it, and I need an equal sign after that, and then I'm going to display, whoops, message, ending percent, ending angle bracket. Okay, and that should work. So let's run that and see if that works okay. So I've got hello world, and right below that it says hello from Java EE JSP. Okay, so our Java is working so far in this. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work with a database. Now, one of two ways I can do this. One, I can connect to an existing database, or in this example what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own database. I'm going to go ahead and close this out and collapse that. Okay, and I'm going into the services tab, and under databases, expand that, I'm going to create a Java database. So I'm going to right click on database, create a database. Give the database a name. Example database. For this database, for the security, I'm going to call it my username, my database. Or how about if I just give a username of Bob and a password of pass. Confirm that password. Pass. Okay. Now, obviously, if I were setting this up to be an actual database, I would have more secure username and or password. But for this example, this is good enough. Okay, so my database has been created. Example DB. And let's see, we have not connected to it yet. That's what this little broken line in here means. Okay. So far we're good to go. So I'll double click on this, and when I do, it gives me the information about our database and connects to it. And now let's see. Let's go to tables. When I go to expand that, there are no tables in there. So I'm going to click on this and right click, and it says create a table. Now if you don't know anything about databases, you need to do a little bit of homework to see what I'm doing here. But a relational database is made up of tables of information that are related to each other. These tables are related to each other. So we'll see what that means. Let's go ahead and create a table. And let's see, a name is, call it customers. Now I'm going to add columns of information, and a table is like a spreadsheet. There are columns, and this is the name of a column, and then the rows are the actual data that go in there. And again, let's go ahead and take a look at this. But let's create a column, and we'll create an ID. And an ID will make the ID. What type of data is this? Well, let's call it an integer data type, or a whole number. And it is a primary key, which means that every row of data will have a unique identifier. Okay, add another column, and this column is going to be, I'm going to call it first name, and it is going to be a set of strings, so it is going to be variable character or string. Size, maximum of 50 characters. It is not going to be null or empty, and this is going to force us to put a actual name in there. So every first name, you'll have to put something in to each first name. And okay, and then I'm going to add another column, and let's call that last name, another varchar, and again 50 characters. Okay, and that's it. Click OK on that. Okay, so we have in our database a table. We've got one called customers, and if I expand this, I see that I've got an ID, I've got a place for a first name and a place for a last name. Okay, pretty small database, and inside of this pretty small table. All right, let's add some rows of data to this table. So I'm going to right click on the name of my table and oops, okay. It came up with the select statement, and I'm going to go down here to ID and actually oops, click on this to insert records. Okay, so I'm going to add some records to this and put in a unique ID. Normally these are generated for you, but in this example I'll just manually type it in. Okay, so that's all for that one, and I'll add that row. Whoops. Huh. This is a clumsy way to do it. There are better tools for, and I need to add a row after that. Okay, pop some names in there and we're all done. So we have created a database, added a table with an ID, first name, last name, and we went in and added some data to that, and now we have a database with some data in it. Okay, so let's go to the next phase, which will be creating a Jsp file where we can access the data from this database, connect to the database, and then access the data out of that database. Okay,